Ladies and gents, welcome back to E20 Zone TV. I am back to talk about, well, where do we go from here? A really, really poor performance from West Ham on the weekend. And what do we do? How do we turn our fortunes round? I sat with James on Sunday and gave a very raw, emotional, slightly hungover response to what was a really bad performance from West Ham United. And I've seen a lot of interesting opinion pieces and a lot of interesting news coming out from various places in West Ham. A lot of pressure, understandably, on the manager now. And there's a lot of fans that have got a lot of questions for Lopetegui. Where do we go from here? What do we actually do? So I've come back to effectively offer my opinion on this. What do we change? Who can we look to for inspiration? And what tactics should we be employing? I'm going to answer all of that in this video, as well as talk about one man who I think is going to be key to West Ham turning around our fortunes this season. Before we jump into that, as always, please do like the video. Please do subscribe to E20 if you're not already. Tell your mum, tell your dog, tell your uncle, I don't care. But let's jump into it. Not that I want to bring it up and go through it in too much depth again, but the problems are evident immediately when you look at West Ham's formation here. SofaScore, which is what I'm just having a look at here, has us down as having a 3-4-3, which just didn't work. We know this. Edson Alvarez got dragged from pillar to post by Nicholas Jackson. And if you were to take this guy out, look how far apart the centre-backs are, which is exactly what happened. And ultimately, 2 of their 3 goals were from either one of our centre-backs going missing or both of our centre-backs being miles apart. The first goal, Edson Alvarez just looked like, if he ran any slower, he would have been going backwards. So the problems were far too evident, and it left us a man short in the middle as well. When Edson Alvarez was playing so deep, these 2 guys, when we were pressing, did they push on? Did they sit? They were kind of stuck in between the 2. And one of these 3 for Chelsea was always free. And ultimately, it hurt us. They took their 3 chances. They didn't create much else, but they didn't need to. They were just waiting for us to make the mistakes. And they absolutely cruised past us. And there's a lot of people, like I said at the start of the video, a lot of West Ham fans and a lot of journalists, neutrals, whoever, asking questions of Lopetegui. And it seems already the board are coming out and saying that they stand by Lopetegui, although some shots being fired, I think, between Sullivan and Steiden as to who's to blame for appointing Lopetegui, which is really concerning this early in the season. We shouldn't be having to say, no, let's stick with the plan. No, this person chose him. No, this person chose him. That's the worrying thing. So I don't want to get caught up too much in that. I want to look at, well, how do we actually change things around? And I looked for inspiration in another game that we were actually in, which was the Villa game at the start of the season. And whilst we were pretty abject in this game as well, we scored a penalty, missed a chance in the last minute, but ultimately Villa were a better team for the majority of this game. I looked at what Villa actually did in this game, and the way they set up, Lopetegui needs to be looking at and trying to take inspiration from his fellow countryman, Unai Emery. The way they attack is something that we should be trying to model ourselves on. First and foremost, they've got 4 defenders who are very comfortable on the ball. Pau Torres, especially at the back, looked really, really solid in this game. They had players who are comfortable dropping in and taking the ball from them. McGinn and Rodgers were especially fluid in this game. Sometimes fluid in this game, sorry. John McGinn would pop out into the middle, Rodgers would pop out to the left, but always you would see one of them drop in, take the ball, lay it off, and then a third man was making a run to get forward. And we did not know what to do with it. How easily did they cut through us? Ollie Watkins was unfit, but tried to get involved in that as well. John Duran obviously came on and scored. So they have the right squad, they got the right players, and they play like a really, really well-drilled unit. And that's the kind of things we need to be doing. If I look back at, what we did in our build-up play, it was quite evident that when we had the ball, Chelsea would press and force us into the wide areas, and a player would get isolated and they would slow our attack down without necessarily needing to win the ball back from us. But they would have the time to get their team back and get themselves organised in a low block. And we just didn't know how to break them down. We don't have a lot of experience in playing that way. We've typically operated in a low block under David Moyes, and it worked for the most part. It may have been hard to watch, but it was a tactical plan. It was a strategy, and everyone knew what they were doing. So ultimately, it may not be what the fans wanted to see, but as I've said before, there's not one single way for a team to win a football match. And this is a very different way that we've looked to employ, and it ultimately hasn't worked for us so far. So I looked at it and I thought, well, what do I actually want to see, and how do we actually turn this around? And now there's a few reasons that I would go into this as my way to turn it around. So, and there are areas of the fan base that will look at this as a lineup and will say, you're insane. There's a phrase that gets thrown around satirically, which is "take the shackles off," which makes me laugh because I know there was an area of our fan base that wanted to see us just go all out attack last season, which you can have your opinions on that, but we need to have a serious conversation about what the future of West Ham's lineup actually is. And I look at this lineup. And again, we're waiting on Todibo to be ready, which I'm going to touch on very shortly. Nicholas Fulkrug's not started a Premier League game yet. But ultimately, our downfall in the Chelsea game was not that we weren't defensive enough. It's that we were a man short when we were pressing. All three of their goals came from very quick back to front and us being short at the back. Now, you could say, well, why don't we drop another player back? Why don't we play these two players here deeper? Why don't we drop this guy deeper? And why don't we actually have a mid-block where we try and cut the ball out? That's not the way that Lopetegui likes to play. He obviously likes to play with a higher press and actually a higher line defensively. And again, the high lines come in for a lot of criticism recently as well, and understandably so. We've had Mavropanos operating in this area, who's been caught out a number of times. Certainly my mind goes back to the Fulham game, where again, a simple ball that went through, Mavropanos is stood there with his hand in the air. Emil Smith-Rowe calmly collects the ball in this area here, cuts it back, and Fulham score. The first rule of this kind of formation, when you're playing a high line, is it's the last line of defence. So if the ball comes over the top or goes through, you keep your arms down and you just track back. You just sprint back as quickly as you can. Tottenham are a good example of a team that do that. And again, Tottenham's formation and strategy has its flaws in itself, but because they play so high up the pitch, they will always track back. And Van de Ven does a great job of coming in and dropping behind the line and sweeping up when necessary. Now, I don't think they're the same kind of player, but Todibo in this scenario is big, he's strong, he's quick, and he'll be the kind of athletic player that we're going to need in that back line to employ this high line successfully. So I look forward to when he is incorporated into the team. I know there's been a lot of talk about he needs to toughen up, is the quote that's come out of the camp from supposedly Lopetegui, is what he said. I mean, I don't watch him in training. I'm not privy to how he's performing and how strong he actually is. But we do know that physically he's been brought in because he's a big, strong defender. We do know that he's comfortable on the ball. We do know that he ticks all of the boxes that Lopetegui would want. And Mavropanos has been found wanting a number of times this season already. So I think he unlocks this high line and makes it look a lot stronger. But what this actually does when you're pressing, we were short a man in the press. We weren't cutting down the passing lanes properly. Once they actually get forward and press properly and actually cover off, if we imagine the ball is in this area here, it relies on you actually cutting off the passing lanes so that instead of them being able to pass through and find what was Cole Palmer in the area that Alvarez should have been operating in, instead of that, we actually cut that passing lane and force them to either play it long to the centre forward or try and play it over the top. And that's where the high line either manages to step forward and cut something out, or if it goes over the top, the other defender comes in and covers. So that's the reason I think this works from a pressing perspective. But I think most importantly, when we're building up from the back, you have to have centre-backs who are comfortable on the ball as well. And at the moment, whilst Kilman's fairly comfortable on the ball and he's had a couple of moments where he's looked really, really good, again, that goal away to Palace springs to mind where he picks it up and distributes it really, really well. And ultimately we go through and score. That springs to mind. But again, without wanting to dig out a single player, Mavropanos doesn't fit that kind of style of centre-back. Whereas Todibo does. Again, he showed in the Bournemouth game that he has a lot of adapting to do to get to Premier League level. But ultimately, if you see some of the clips that I've seen of him playing when he was at Nice, he's no mug. He's played for top quality teams and he's played in the ball playing centre-back role a number of times. He's played for Barcelona, he's played for Schalke, he's played for a number of good sides. So it relies on, when we've got the ball, your centre-backs actually being comfortable, dropping into these positions and taking the ball and creating effectively two triangles here. So that if the ball comes right, your player's got two out balls at least. And the idea's got to be to encourage teams to come and press us. Because what we do is we play very, very quickly to try and get forward. They force us out into these areas along here where Somerville and Bowen are. And ultimately we get stuck in the sides. We rotate it back round. We allow them to get into a low block. And then we can't break a team down. The whole idea has to be similar to what I said that Villa had done, which is here. And when they played us, they did exactly that. They played deep, they waited for us to push onto them, and as soon as we did, they sprung it, and they broke through, they played the ball forward, and they created chances. Now, I'm not saying this is the silver bullet, that this is going to completely change West Ham's season immediately, but I do think Todibo's the forgotten man, and I do think that all this talk about him not being ready and stuff, fine, he's still going to take a little bit longer, that's fair enough. There are players that you do have to kind of protect a little bit and you do have to let them have the time to adapt to the Premier League before we make our decisions on whether he's good enough. You throw him in too soon and you can hurt his confidence and then you can hurt his chances of ever being good enough. So I do get it. But ultimately, we've got some important games coming up. Look, Anfield tomorrow night. I'm recording this on the Tuesday. We play on the Wednesday. So Anfield tomorrow night. Look, no one's expecting anything. You could say play that lineup. It probably gets taken apart, so I'm not fussed about it at Anfield. You could then look at the Brentford away game and say it's a good opportunity to potentially try that. But going away from home against a tricky Brentford side, again, is that the right time to kind of try something pretty new? The argument I would make is it's not actually that new. It's the missing piece to what we've already been trying to do. We've been caught in between. Do we high press? Do we drop back? We then high press in like this half-assed way, which does not work. It really winds me up watching West Ham try and press, but not everyone goes. Either all go or don't go, in my opinion. So I actually think that Todibo is the missing piece in this. He'll allow us to press forward with more intent, free up Alvarez to join that press and to sit in front or in between the lines, between whoever the centre forward is and whoever the attacking midfielders are. But then it also allows us to play out of the back a little bit better as well. So that is what's been missing. We've missed chance creation. I think we created 4, maybe 5 big chances in the Premier League so far in 5 games. If we want to be challenging in the top half of the Premier League, that's not good enough. And it isn't going to get better by playing 2 6s. We've seen the downfalls of our formation and the limitations that we give ourselves when we play Rodriguez and Alvarez as 2 6s, or when we play Souček in the 10. I did a video on that and about how that hurts us tactically as well. So we have to be looking at this and going, well, firstly, how do we get our best players on the pitch? And secondly, how do we get them playing in their best positions? And that formation that I've shown is the way to get what I believe is our best 11 on the pitch. We obviously need to see what Nicholas Füllkrug can do. Again, I think he's a forgotten man as well. There's a lot of people that are writing him off just because John Duran's scoring a few goals for Aston Villa. I'm sorry, we bid best part of 40 million for him. We didn't get him. The fact that we've bid that amount of money for him, I would hope he's scoring goals. I'm not being funny. It means our scouting department identified someone who is a certified goal scorer. We didn't get him. We got someone else. We need to get behind the guy that we've got, and we need to give him a chance to actually start some Premier League games once he's fully fit. I think it's pretty telling that he started for Germany in the internationals and he scored for Germany. He got injured. He's now not fully fit. Will he start against Liverpool? Probably not. Will he start against Brentford? Potentially. Let's see. But I certainly think if you're going to try that formation, Ipswich at home is the perfect opportunity. If you're going to try that formation with those people, Ipswich are the kind of team that when we press them, we should be able to win the ball back. If we give them too much respect, they've got a lot of good players who will be able to punish us. And it will prove a trickier game than perhaps it looks on paper. And if you don't win that game, then the fans are going to start becoming restless. So that's my opinion anyway. If your immediate reaction to that is that I'm talking absolute nonsense and we should never try those people in those positions, tell me why. Like, if there's anything that I've missed here as to why that wouldn't potentially work, then tell me. If it's that you're worried about not having enough defensive players in the middle, we've had 3 CDMs playing at one point this season, and we were awful. We just played this crazy quasi 5 at the back formation against Chelsea, and we were awful. So we have to be looking to try and get the right players in their right positions, and this is the way to do it. We've got important games coming up, and I really want Julian Lopetegui to succeed. So I want to see him use that formation, and I want to see him use those players in that formation at the right time. Let me know what you think. I'm genuinely really interested to see people's opinions on this. I have seen some people in the comments before calling for this lineup. So I know I'm not alone out there, but I also know there's going to be some negativity towards it. So please do let me know what you think in the comments. I'm interested to see whether you believe that will work, or whether you believe we should be trying something else. Let's hope for a better performance against Liverpool. Like I say, if we don't win the game, we don't win the game, but it certainly needs to get a lot better.